Hello, I am Guy Selgar from touringplans.com, and in this video, we're going to be talking to Tim Grassey, who recently went to Tokyo Disneyland, but he is a Walt Disney World frequent visitor. So I just thought that this would be interesting to people who are maybe thinking about visiting a different Disney destination than the one they're used to. In upcoming videos in this series, I'd like to talk to people who, are Disneyland locals who visit Disney World, vice versa, and any of the other parks as well. I just thought I'd start off with Tim since recently I've also been visiting Tokyo Disneyland. I've grown quite fond of the place, and visiting it is a pretty big step because it takes a little bit of extra planning that you may not be used to if you're visiting the Florida parks. Because when you visit Disney World or Disneyland, a lot of times you almost get on autopilot. And there's Disney vacation packages where you really don't need to do much. You just pick what you want, and then you can pay it all in one lump sum. So this is Tim, and before we get started, since I have a feeling this is going to be a long video, I just wanted you to plug anything that you want to plug right now, starting off. So go ahead and do that, Tim.
Sure. Thanks, Guy. I have a podcast and a website. Podcast where I actually did a trip report on this. Clocked around 2 hours and 45 minutes is the E-Ticket Report podcast. I do that with Derek Bergen of the Touring Plans Network and Wakefield, Chris Wakefield. And I also have my own webpage, wdwthemeparks.com, where I track Disney World news and rumors.
Awesome. Okay. So now that we got the plugs out of the way, I'm going to get into the questions. I have a series of questions I'm going to ask Tim. First off, how many times have you been to Disney World? If you don't know the exact number, just a rough estimate.
I'd say 40, 45 times or so.
Okay.
40 to 45 separate vacations.
Right. And you go with your family a lot, your brother and your mom and dad and stuff like that, right? And your wife, of course.
Yeah, so there's family vacations in there, and there's some with just my wife and I.
Okay, cool. And you've been to Disneyland a few times, right?
Yeah, probably half a dozen or so.
Okay. So, where do you live, and how long does it take you usually to fly down to Florida?
So I'm in Massachusetts, a little bit south of Boston. We usually fly out of Providence just because the airport is much better than Logan. And it takes about 3 hours, give or take 15 minutes, depending on, wind speed and all that fun stuff. And
Right.
6 hours to go across the country.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously about the same for me to go across the country. I live in Los Angeles, California. Flying to Orlando, it's about 5 or 6 hours. So my next question is, after all the times you visited Disney World, are you sick of it yet? Do you still enjoy going, obviously?
Yeah, we got a trip planned in September. Obviously, I like when there's new things there, but we have our old favorites. We can't help but compare coasts and now compare a third resort to it. But yeah, there are still things there that keep it fresh for us every time we go. So
Right. Yeah,
I can go and stay.
I still, obviously love visiting Disney World and Disneyland. It never gets old for me personally. I know some people may, get a little tired of it. They say it gets a little stagnant, but not for me. And would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I've walked around Disneyland with you though, and I think your mood, depending on the day, may be a little bit different. But aside from that, I think there are things in the resorts that keep it fresh. And yeah, you might not necessarily remember your 50th ride on Splash Mountain, but it doesn't mean you dislike it.
Right.
So,
So when did you first start thinking about a trip to Tokyo Disneyland?
I'd say probably in the last 5 years, we wanted to do something. I got married in 2012, and we wanted to do something a little bit out of the ordinary for us. So we considered it then, but we wound up going to Alaska instead. And I shoehorned Cars Land into that as well, which was nice. But it's always been kind of something on the back burner, but waited for friends to do it first to get a little bit of an experience. We were fearful of the language barrier. We were fearful of the flight, but really more the culture shock than anything. And wanted to hear it from friends, people that we trusted, not just travel books, saying that no, it's okay, it's safe, it's very much westernized. So while it's a little bit more exotic than your trip to Florida or California, it's still in our wheelhouse for stuff to do.
Right. Yeah. It definitely, there was a little bit of a mental barrier for me as well. And it was something that I had wanted to do forever since I was in, it was my last year of high school when Tokyo Disney Sea opened in 2001. And I just remember seeing pictures of it on the internet and being like kind of like a video game fan and, other kind of nerdy subculture things. I always saw Japan as like a place I would really want to visit to experience all these weird, unique things. But yeah, getting over the hump for me was hard as well. And another thing, this may sound kind of weird, is like I just always kind of assumed that it was way too expensive. And
Yeah, that's definitely there.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
and it is like it's not cheap, obviously, but once you actually start looking into it and doing research, and I found out how to set up travel alerts, so I got my airfare deals down to like $650
Wow.
for one of my trips. You definitely learn how to save money of it, and it starts to become more real of a possibility.
No, another thing that you mentioned. Yeah, the price point was also a sticking point for us as well. And I think within the last couple of years, I priced out, all right, what do I want to do when I go to Japan? I know that I want to do Disney, but what else do I want to do? Because I'm not going to do 2 weeks in Disney. That's not realistic. I love it, but I'm not going to fly to Japan to just do that. So figured out what I wanted to do, kind of priced that out. And what I found, and you're probably going to echo this sentiment, is that hotels were really the pricier item there. Park tickets, other entertainment seem to be about 70 to 80% of what it is in the States. But the hotels, actually, if you're comparing it to a Disney World hotel stay, it's about 70 to 80%. But I found that those rooms were about 300 to 450 a night U.S. equivalent, and that's for somebody like myself. When I go to Disney World, I don't stay on site. My in-laws have a condo off-site, so that's nothing for me. When I go to Disneyland, I don't stay at any of the on-site hotels. I stay at one of the Good Neighbor hotels that are, $100 or less a night. So I'm not used to paying that much for hotel rooms, and that's really what got the price up there for me. But I know recently when you went, you found ways around that. And you
Yeah.
could probably speak more
So
intelligently to
the
that.
way I plan my trips really is, I'll start looking at the airfare prices, and I may see a super cheap deal, but the hotels are more expensive during that periods. But then I'll find a little bit more expensive airfare, but then the on-site hotels may only be $100 a night or $150 a night, and this is for like Hilton or Sheraton, which are pretty
Yep.
nice hotels, very English friendly. Not that the other hotels aren't English friendly, but these are American brands, obviously, that people are comfortable with. So
Very
that's
Western friendly is probably.
right. And then another way
Yeah,
I save
they're
money,
Western hotels.
right? And then another way I save money with hotels over there is during any of the weekends, pretty much hotels get more expensive on site. So even though it's a pain, I like to move off site during the weekends and stay in an Airbnb or a hotel somewhere in the city, because not going to want to go in the parks during the weekend anyway, 'cause that's when they're just insanely busy, the biggest
Right.
Disney crowds you've probably ever seen. Um, so just avoid all that and kind of get out of there and see all the amazing sights in the city, because there's so much worth seeing around Japan, around Tokyo, Kyoto, and Osaka, and all that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And we took your advice there. Um, I talked with you. I talked with Tom Bricker and several other people as well about it. And everybody said you're not going to want to be in the parks over the weekend. Probably don't even want to be in Tokyo over the weekend if you can
Yeah,
help it. So find something that you want to do over the weekend that interests you, and that's exactly what we did. We went up to Kyoto
yeah.
for the one weekend that we put in the vacation, and it worked out well because we had scheduled things. We didn't really get hit with ridiculous crowds then, and then went to the parks during the week, and they were fine.
So you gathered your information about pricing and the other things you mentioned. At what point during your research did you and your wife fully commit to the trip?
So vacation time for me is a little bit easier to come up with than it is for my wife. I work in a small company, a small accounting firm with my father. So really only answering to one other person for vacation time, and as long as it's not during tax season, we're pretty flexible there. So really, it was trying to find a couple of time periods where it could work with my wife's schedule, and still be outside of that April restriction. So the way that it worked out this time around, end of May worked perfectly for us and for her. She was able to get the 2 weeks off that we wanted, and really, I don't know that there was a better option for her work-wise throughout the course of the year. So the first thing was basically just hammering down the vacation time. But we had gotten to the point prior to that of, all right, can we afford to do this? We priced out tickets, we priced out hotel, estimated, about what it would cost, and said, all right, that itself is doable. Now, can we actually fit it into our schedule?
Right.
So, I would start with the price point first because, I mean, I don't know what you spent normally. We looked at this as kind of a once in a lifetime type thing, so we
Yeah.
splurged a little bit more. But my initial projection was in the $7,000 to $8,000 range. I think it probably came in a little bit north of that when we look at credit card bills and everything including. But I said, all right, can we swing that? Yeah, sure, we can do that. So
Yeah, the 7 or 8 thousand range is sounds pretty near my one splurge trip. I've been to Tokyo 3 times now, 2014, 15, and 16. And one
there's
of
a
them,
problem, folks.
what's that?
You have a problem.
Yeah, well, I'm addicted. But I have the blessing of living on the West Coast where I
That
can
helps.
get
Yeah.
$600 flights, and I split it with my friend with my friends the Brickers, and we can split hotel rooms and stuff like that. But anyway, that sounds pretty close to my one like splurge trip where we were like, okay, let's like do it up this time. Let's stay in some of the Disney owned, or I guess Disney named hotels, because
Right.
for those of you guys who don't know, the actual Disney hotels, there's three of them, soon to be four. There's three of them on site: Tokyo Disneyland Hotel, Hotel Miracosta, and Disney Ambassador Hotel. Like Tokyo Disneyland Hotel and Miracosta, those are $650 a night easily through most of the year, and they're booked like solid almost the year. I believe they have a 99% occupancy rate, so 99% of the year they're booked solid.
6 months out. If you're 5 months and 29 days, you're screwed.
Yeah, you got to
You
be
gotta be
ready
there.
to go and pull the trigger if you like when those go on sale.
You mentioned earlier about the Sheraton and the Hilton. I didn't stay at the Hilton. I stayed at the Sheraton, and it's close enough to the parks. It has monorail access, and
Right.
to be honest, from strictly a comfort standpoint, this was the best hotel room that I thought we had. I thought the beds were better than what they had at Miracosta, and I thought the pillows were better.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed staying in Japanese hotels is they like their beds and their pillows very firm.
Yeah.
But they so points for Hilton and Sheraton. Another thing is especially with the Hilton, the rooms are massive, like they're
Okay.
huge. But yeah, beds are very comfortable. So that just goes back to what we were saying about the accommodations. Um,
Right. Right.
so you
That
finally
was a
get,
surprise to us with the Miracosta. The beds were quite firm there,
yeah.
and not that it was something that we couldn't sleep on, but it was just more firm than we're used to. And I'm a delicate flower, so I need a little bit more pampering there.
Okay, so you and your wife, finally get to May 2016. Your trip is approaching, and it's time to start packing. So, how differently did you have to pack compared to a normal trip to Walt Disney World?
So in Disney World, as I said, we're staying at a condo that has laundry facilities. That's a big thing. And when you're
Yeah.
packing for 12 days, um, you're packing 12 days of everything. So trying to fit all that in there was a bit of a struggle. I certainly admit to wearing shorts multiple days, and I'm sure you probably do the exact same thing.
Oh, yeah, I do the same
Uh,
thing. I always bring half as many clothes as I need, and then I I go to wash them. And so my previous trip a couple months ago, I stayed in Hotel Okura, which is a pretty like famous Japanese brand of hotels, and they just didn't have like a self-service laundry rooms, but it's next door to the Sheraton, so I walked over to the Sheraton and washed my clothes there.
Yeah, we didn't do that. I probably should have asked you that question. It would have saved us some room in the suitcases. But I mean that worked out fine. It was just all right. Not a whole lot of room for souvenirs, but thankfully the merchandise kind of sucks over there, so that really wasn't an issue.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring that up later about the merchandise being overrated. So yeah, we'll get to that later.
Okay, but yeah, no, I think preparing for it, the biggest thing. One thing that I didn't do, I brought my laptop with me. They do have American style outlets in the hotel rooms, but they don't have the grounded outlets, the three-prong outlets.
Right.
So at every hotel that I went to, just asked the front desk, they gave me an adapter, and it wasn't an issue. But something just to think about if you want to have that one less thing that you've got to ask the hotel staff for. Not many Japanese native speakers know the word for plug or outlet, so just one less thing to worry about. Bring a 2 to 3 prong adapter if you're bringing anything that needs it, and maybe even a power strip as well.
That's a very good point. I would bring up to my wife and the wife of Sarah Bricker, who I travel with Tom and Sarah Bricker when I go to Japan. So Sarah and my wife, bring, hair straighteners, blow dryers and whatnot, and they have to look for special ones that will actually, work with their voltage and their plugs and all that. I didn't know you could ask for an adapter. That's interesting.
And it seemed to be a more universal one as well, where it wasn't just for American plugs.
Okay.
So it was actually a rather useful device, and I was tempted to steal it, but everybody was kind of so nice.
Yeah.
And not really that much of a klepto. But that was a big thing, and the other thing that you tipped me into or clued me in on was renting a Wi-Fi device.
Yeah.
And what is it? Global Advanced Communications, I believe, was the company that you recommended.
Yeah.
And I can't speak high enough about them because I screwed up. I got one, and it's unlimited access to a certain extent. When you're like me and attach your computer to it, and then download 5 gigs of photos and forget to turn off your online backup, and it tries to stream 5 gigs of photos through there, it's going to throttle your speed.
Yeah.
So I didn't put that together for a day and a half, and wound up calling them outside of business hours at around 6:30 local time. Actually, I emailed them rather. They called the hotel that I was staying at, and they connected them to me within 10 minutes. And had a new device waiting for me when we checked in at Miracosta a day later.
Wow.
So
yeah, that's very cool. And for those who don't
really
know, for those who don't know, this device, it's just a little box. It fits easily in your pocket or your purse or whatever. And it has high-speed internet. And let me tell you, when you go over there and use this mobile, internet, you're going to come back home and use your phone and just be like super jealous of the speeds of their mobile network, because it is super fast. And I was like streaming Periscope and sending snaps and tweets and everything was just uploading super fast. But yeah, that's a must-have.
Yeah,
even if you don't do the social media thing at all, even if you want to disconnect from the world, when you're navigating in Tokyo or any part of Japan, you need to have Google Maps on hand, because it tells you, you just type in where you want to go, and then it'll tell you the exact trains to take, any transfers you need to do, and it makes everything super easy.
Yeah, again, that was another pointer you gave me, and we swore by it. Really helped us out, especially when we were kind of doing some spur of the moment things in and around Tokyo.
Yeah.
Just helped us get there. But to echo that about the speed of the internet, we were in the middle of Adventureland one night and wanted to FaceTime with my nephew on his birthday, and we're able to do it without issue. No interruption in image. I guess the only issue was that the parade was going on, so we could barely hear him. But that's not the fault of the streaming device. It was fine. So.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the flight. Is this the longest flight you've ever taken?
Yeah.
Okay.
12 hours. I connected out of Toronto using Air Canada. So 12 hours, give or take half an hour, depending on the direction.
Okay, so how did you pass the time on that long flight? Because I remember the the first time that I was going to travel overseas, that was actually like the biggest thing I was worrying about was the flight because, I was worried about walking around, and then people are telling me like, yeah, you got to be sure to get up every hour because you can get blood clots and then have a heart attack and stuff.
Yeah, it wasn't quite that bad. That's not.
Yeah,
I did
yeah.
get
Well,
up a couple of times.
yeah, that was my thing. It didn't end up being as nearly as bad as I thought. I mean, it was still super long, but like I don't know about the airline you took, but there was movies, like hundreds and hundreds of movies available on the in-flight entertainment system and games and everything. And then I had my phone. There's no internet access, but I still had games and stuff I could play.
Yeah, same thing here. Air Canada had a pretty decent selection of recent movies, and surprisingly unedited as well. From nudity, language, violence, all of that was in there. So we watched Deadpool. I started to watch The Revenant and I fell asleep. Um, I had Wayne's World 2 on in the background, so it wasn't just new movies. But
Yeah, my
we
wife was making fun of me because I'm terrible at watching movies, and there's a lot of
yeah,
new movies I want to watch. And what did I end up watching on the plane? I watched Office Space, which I've seen like
I
a thousand
think we
times.
watched that. But we also our cable provider has um, a mobile app as well where we can download stuff from our DVR. So we did that before we left. So we had like 20 shows that we could watch. Although our DVR filled up and most of them on being deleted, at least on the flight there, we were able to watch stuff on like tablets and stuff that was actually off our own DVR as well.
Okay, so after 12 hours of traveling, you're finally arrive in Tokyo. And I just want to know what were you feeling when you finally arrived? Because I remember the first time I flew over there and I was getting off the plane, and it just like really sunk in that I was, 6,000 miles away from home or whatever it was. I was in a foreign country, a language I didn't speak, and it was like kind of surreal, that just to finally be in a different country like that. So I'm wondering how did you feel?
Well, there certainly were nerves because we didn't know what a lot of this was going to turn out to be. We didn't know how our transportation was going to work out. We'd been assured that was fine, but I'd say even through that for those first few days, the first I think the day we arrived, we actually had an issue with the limousine bus service that we had hired. We just had the wrong tickets, and they found somebody that spoke English and basically explained to us what we needed to do, and that was fine. We got to our hotel fine.
Okay,
But
before you go on, I want to explain what the limousine bus is. It's just a normal bus. It's not like an actual limousine or anything, but it's a bus that makes frequent trips from the airports to a ton of different destinations and hotels. Tokyo Disney
right,
being one of them, and it's pretty cheap. I want to say it's $22 per person the last time I was there.
it wasn't even that much for us.
Okay,
I
so
think it was less than.
okay, so it's probably cheaper.
Um,
But yeah, it's a great service, and it's a lot easier than getting on the trains and subway system, especially after you've done the super long, 12-hour
right.
flight from wherever you're coming from.
A point of note on it though is that for the Disney area hotels, they don't run those buses that. So if you want to use it, just be forewarned that if you've got a late arriving flight, then you're probably not going to be in luck to do it.
Right.
But
That happened to me the first time we went there. We arrived a couple hours after the last bus had left. So taking a taxi is prohibitively expensive in Tokyo,
yeah,
and we didn't want to take the train, so we found what was basically a super shuttle. They don't have anything like super shuttle there, but well, they don't have anything that is super shuttle there, but it was something like it. But it's you just hire a driver, and I think it was $80 for my wife and I, and it would have been. I think when we did the math at the time, it would have been 220 to take a taxi, if I remember right. So yeah, we this guy, it's a company. It's not like Uber or anything. That's another thing that doesn't exist in Tokyo is Uber or Lyft or any of the ride sharing services. So yeah, we ended up having to hire this driver to drive us to Tokyo Disney.
yeah, we were prepared to do that if we were delayed at all, but it worked out fine. I said we actually were getting wrong vouchers for this from our travel agent, but
Oh,
we
cool.
were told what we needed to get, and actually Our travel agent's going to refund us the difference. We just sent them back yesterday. So
Nice.
that in itself was fine. But again, we're dealing with unfamiliar areas, and I didn't know that every sign was going to be 50% in English, 50% in Japanese, it seemed like. But on the train, same thing. Really, I think up until the point where we went to Kyoto and took a non-JR line transportation, we'll explain what that is in a minute, out to Osaka to see a baseball game. I think once we did that, we're like, all right, we got a grasp on this. We know what we're doing. We've basically done anything remotely complicated, remotely out of our comfort zone.
Yeah.
We're going to be fine for the rest of the trip. And once we got to that point, I think we were fine. But there is certainly an uneasiness when you're in any foreign country. So
Yeah, but I totally agree, and it definitely once you get the hang of it, and once you do it a couple times, it's a lot easier. And yeah, there's, especially in Tokyo, there's a lot of English everywhere, and I say this to everybody when they ask about the language barrier: is you're not going to hold super in-depth conversations with anyone, but you can exchange pleasantries and get basic information out of them if you have any questions.
Right, exactly. And the few language barrier incidents that we had were minimal, and they were well intentioned too. It was somebody trying to help us where we didn't necessarily need help, and we couldn't explain that. Something to that effect.
I know exactly what you mean. I've had the same thing in train stations where I'm kind of staring at my phone and staring at a map, and I know generally what to do, and I'm about to go, but some very, very nice person walks up and wants to offer help. But
right.
I'm not going to complain about it, obviously. So before we get to the Disney stuff, you did other things in Japan besides TDR. You mentioned, you went to Kyoto, you saw a baseball game, you saw a sumo match. I remember you mentioning. Did you enjoy sightseeing around Japan?
Yeah, beyond the sumo match, beyond the baseball game, we hit a lot of temples and shrines, Buddhist and Shinto establishments, I guess, in Kyoto. Friend warned me though that if it's not really your thing, which it really wasn't, but we, when in Rome, we wanted to see some of this stuff because we didn't know when we'd be back. He did warn me that you kind of get like temple fatigue. So
I totally agree.
We set up a tour and did.
I totally agree. They're great. They're beautiful. Totally worth seeing, but. You got to kind of limit it, because if you try to do 20 in the same trip, they kind of start to look the same. But
right.
The big ones are definitely worth seeing, like the Shinonari. Is that how you pronounce it?
You're asking the wrong guy. I have a list of the places that we saw. That was the pretty gold one. That was the one with the torii gates.
Yeah, the torii
gates. That was the one with like the big dance floor, basically. I think you're on for Shinonari. But those types of things, we kind of compressed it all into a day and a half, and we did tours with them as well. Depending on your personality, you can choose to do that on your own. But I think with my wife and I, we looked at it as, all right, if we don't do this on a tour, we're not going to do it. If we don't have it scheduled, we're going to find an excuse to stop. It actually worked out well. We did a full day tour in Kyoto, where I think we hit 6 or 7 different locations, and some of the ones that we liked the best happened to be at the end of it, and we probably would have bailed after a couple.
Yeah.
So that's the way that worked for us. If you're more apt to want to explore on your own, then by all means do that. You'll know yourself at that point. But I certainly recommend at least giving them a try, even if you don't necessarily think they're going to be that interesting to you.
Yeah, I agree. Totally worth seeing. Very, very interesting. Very beautiful to see. Very worth checking out.
Good Christmas card photos.
Yeah. So Tokyo Disney Resort has 2 parks. It has Tokyo Disneyland and Tokyo Disney Sea, for those of you who don't know. The first park you visited on your trip was Disney Sea, right?
Actually, we started in Tokyo Disneyland.
Oh, okay.
The reason being, one of the marquee attractions, Pooh's Honey Hunt, was closing. It was its last day before a refurb, the first day that we were planning on going into the park. So we had to do Disneyland first.
Okay.
And I think it kind of worked out that way as well, so that we're in a place that's somewhat familiar, even though it's entirely different.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I mean, Disney Sea is so unique. Delaying it by an additional day, I don't think was a huge problem. And again, as we're trying to slowly work our way into the Japanese culture and just the way of doing things, going into a very familiar area with Cinderella's castle at the end of it, albeit a covered main street, made it a little bit easier.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so I was wrong. You visited Tokyo Disneyland first. I'm gonna ask questions about Disney Sea first.
Okay, whatever.
So the Disney Sea is a very hyped up park by the people who've seen it. The praises are endless for this park. So what were your expectations going in, and did Disney Sea meet those expectations after you saw it?
I expected to be wowed, and I was.
Right.
It really is a beautiful park. That's a word that I think is most commonly used about it. But there's nothing wrong with this park. It is flawless. Even we use the word flawless probably too much in society, but it really, everything blends together. Everything has a purpose. The various ports work well together. To the point where I think I actually have some concern about the future of it, only because adding to it, you're adding to what is basically perfection.
Yeah.
And I can kind of see some of the additions. Like I can see where Soarin' fits in when you've got the flying machine theme.
Yeah.
But they've added characters to a park that was largely bereft of characters when it opened. And that's a very dangerous thing to do. And it seems that every time Disney tries to open a park that doesn't have a lot of characters in it and they add them later on, it seems a little bit forced. I think they've done a pretty good job here, but the more you add, the tougher it is to make that connection when everything right now makes sense together.
Yeah, you're right. The way it all blends together is flawless. Like it's I've never seen anything like it in any theme park. Which is interesting because Tokyo Disneyland there's no thematic, transitions anywhere, but in Tokyo Disneyland or Disney Sea, everything blends. And you mentioned how you're worried about the future for adding and subtracting things. There's a ride called Storm Rider that closed while you were there, actually.
First night we arrived, actually, we were going to go over, but we took a look and saw 3-hour waits and said, all right.
Right.
No.
It's a ride that is the premise is strange. You're on a plane. You're part of a team that controls the weather, but it belongs in that land, Port Discovery, where it's called the building is called the Center for Weather Control, and there's Center for Weather Control logos everywhere, all over the land, and it's like how would you describe that land? It's like
it's okay. So you can't really talk about that land without talking about Mysterious Island as well,
right?
Because they're somewhat connected. So Mysterious Island is the Jules Verne inspired land, has ridiculous amount of great rock work, but steampunk, and the steampunk carries over into Port Discovery, which is more of a futuristic land.
Right. It's like the future, what they thought the future would be in the Victorian times, but the future that never existed.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that futuristic vibe, as well as that old Victorian steampunk look combined, and it really, that's a fantastic transition. But when we were there, as you said, Storm Rider was closed, and I actually didn't see a lot of that signage, so I think some of it has been removed.
Okay.
And it's possible that, I wasn't looking for it because I didn't know about it, but it wasn't anything that I felt was readily apparent in the land. That was just the place we went to go to on Aquatopia and hear Epcot music. Right. So it was a relatively quiet land while we were there, but you beat us there by a couple of weeks, so it looks like there's been some changes since then.
For those who don't know, the Storm Rider closed. It's a simulator attraction. I guess I should say that. And
Yeah.
it's going to reopen as a Finding Nemo. So you're getting into a submarine. So I guess with the submarine, they're keeping it nautical themed because most rides in that park kind of do have a nautical theme. So I guess that's all we can ask for, you know. But you mentioned Soarin'. That's going in the Mediterranean harbor area of the park, which has like a Leonardo da Vinci era kind of thing. So it's going to be these like rickety flying machines instead of like these super slick gliders like in the Orlando and Anaheim versions.
Right, right. And I definitely saw how that fit.
Yeah.
And you actually, even if you're walking through the fortress explorations, you see a replica of Da Vinci's flying machine there. So there's already an existence there. Soren, to me, that adds up. I get the placement of that. Um, but I fear, and I think Finding Nemo very well may be the first incident of this. Oh, actually, I don't know. I guess you could argue Toy Story, you could argue Turtle Talk, where you've put characters in places that didn't necessarily have characters before, but
Yeah.
it's a Disney park. They've got to find ways to loosely blend the theme in. As the leading champion against Frozen in Norway at Epcot, I'm always reluctant to admit that they've done that type of character infusion well. But
Yeah, and I thought
I don't know. I'm a little bit nervous.
I thought Toy Story fit well in Disney Sea. It's especially where it is because it's kind of off in a corner and it's in the American waterfront section of the park, which is like kind of a 1920s New York. And then it's built in the corner in this they call it Toyville Trolley Park, so it's very like Victorian era. Is that the right Victorian
Right.
era?
Yeah, no, you're right.
Very very tastefully done. Looks beautiful, especially at night with all the lights. And then Turtle Talk is also kind of hidden away in a corner. It's in the kind of bowels of the Columbia ship. So there's a full-on Columbia like old-fashioned steamer in the corner of the park, and then down in below the decks there, that's where Turtle Talk is. So it's like you're traveling down below to talk to Crush, and even that is really well themed. And so it's like if they have to put characters in that park, then I I'm glad that they are like that. They're well done, you know.
Right. The bigger concern, and I don't know if you've put any thought into this. They've already announced a Scandinavia section,
Right.
and they announced it as a Scandinavia section, not a Frozen section. And I think both you and I recognize Frozen belongs in the parks. It's a wildly successful franchise.
Oh yeah, especially in Japan, they love Frozen over there. It's
It,
huge.
it needs to be in the parks, but the area that they're looking to put it is between this Port Discovery area, which is futuristic mixed with the Victorian, transitioning into a South American area, Lost
Right.
River Delta.
Right, and the way
So
it transitions now is actually kind of interesting because it's you know it's like you're kind of going into a jungle, and you
Right.
see it's like it's a one of those, you know, outdoor vending toy cart things. It's in the Port Discovery style, but half of it is like wrecked, like they found wreckage in the jungle of this like futuristic.
I didn't
Um,
notice that.
yeah, it's kind of off the beaten path, but so Frozen is going there as the Scandinavia part. The original plan for that corner, kind of like a phase 2 thing, which never got built and now probably will never get built, was a land called Glacier Bay, which was
Okay.
like big snowy frozen peaks and stuff like that. So I'm wondering,
That would still be a difficult transition, so it probably just evolved into it.
yeah. So what was your favorite ride in Disney Sea?
Um, the obvious answer is Journey to the Center of the Earth. The surprise answer for us was Aquatopia.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's again for the uninitiated, it's probably like a B ticket attraction, although it has high capacity for a B ticket. But it uses that trackless ride system that's over in Honey Hunt or Mystic Manor in Hong Kong.
Which
But there's nothing.
Luigi's Rollickin' Roasters at
Yeah,
Disney California Adventure is also using. It's actually a kind of a similar ride, but smaller
yeah,
scale, less beautiful, but you know it's fun.
yeah. It's like Luigi's Rollicking Roadsters, but instead of riding cars, you're riding gigantic Roombas on water, basically.
Yeah,
Uh, and it was I don't want to call it simple because I'm sure that the ride system isn't, but it was relatively simple. But we liked it largely because we could walk right on it. But it was fun. It was fun to just kind of do that in a relatively quiet section of the park at that point because Storm Rider was closed. But
Yeah,
in
it's a
terms of
really
like
simple ride, but it's a lot of fun, and like you said, it's pretty much a walk on. It's two huge sections.
right,
So there's two separate lines, and then it's continuous loading, like a chain kind of, totally
yeah,
trackless. You don't know where you're gonna go, and then when you ride it, your vehicle will do different things each time.
yeah, that's part of the benefit of it. It's why everybody raves about Pooh's Honey Hunt. It's why everybody raves about Mystic Manor as well, because in those cases you have scenes that you're exploring different parts of each time. In this case, you're just exploring different parts of the landscape that they've built for you. But it it I don't think ever really in my preparation for the trip when I was looking at wait times saw a wait more than 5 minutes for it. It's pretty high capacity. It looked like about 1,400 people per hour by
Yeah,
my quick math, which is very high for that type of attraction.
yeah,
But I
um,
mean, your spinners are much lower than that.
yeah. So moving on to Tokyo Disneyland, how did you feel about it? You mentioned that it was very familiar, and I know it shares a lot of attractions and things from Disneyland and Disney World. So how did it feel kind of seeing this weird Amaglam park where there's so many different things? Like for example, you see what is pretty much Disney World's Adventureland, but then kind of to the left of it is a little chunk of New Orleans Square from
Right,
Disneyland in
right.
Anaheim.
So that area of Disneyland, the New Orleans Square area, is one of the coolest areas in Disneyland. I think most of the people that have been there would agree there that it's just kind of a cool area to walk around. Even if you don't buy anything in the shops, it's just really a cool environment set up there.
Right.
And so I liked that was there, but it definitely didn't have the same energy as it did in California because there wasn't much interest in that area. And I'm sure that you've probably run into this as well. Pirates of the Caribbean there is dead.
You
Uh,
know, I remember you saying that, and I've been to the park when it's been, pretty busy, and, I think the wait was an hour or so, but when I was there this last time, it was closed for refurbishment, and then you got there a
okay.
couple weeks later. But yeah, I've been there when it was, not super crowded, super popular, but yeah, that's interesting that you observed that it wasn't as quite as popular as the other rides.
It definitely wasn't when we were there, and I speculated because that it was because Pirates is almost entirely in English there, which was something that surprised me, the amount of English that was used on the attractions. But in terms of that area in general, um, it's that was very familiar because it was very much like Disneyland. You had a Cafe Orleans with the exact same sign. You had a Blue Bayou. There was a Club 33, or at least a 33 on a door in that area as well. So there was a lot of familiarity in like that isolated area.
Yeah.
Even though the layout of every other component of Adventureland wasn't exactly in the same area, there was still some familiarity in that little New Orleans Square section.
Right. And then there's, they have in Fantasyland they have Cinderella's castle, huge, beautiful, the one you've come to know and love. And then right next to that on the side is Snow White's wishing well from Disneyland and the ceramic statues on the little hillside there. Just weird little
Yeah,
things like that.
yeah, and I think I've said to people that I could have taken a picture of Cinderella's castle from certain angles, and you wouldn't have been able to tell that I was in Tokyo.
Right.
But then there are
It has
others
a
where you
slightly different color scheme. Like I describe it as it looks a little bit more realistic, a little bit more warmer. Because the one in Cinderella's castle in Walt Disney World is very blue, but then the
Mhm.
one in Tokyo Disneyland, it kind of has like brown brickwork, and it has kind of a warmer color scheme on the spires and stuff.
It still felt very familiar, and you travel with a much better photographer than I am, so uh, that could have very easily been explained away by my crappy photography. So, um, but no, you're right. If you're looking at two side by side, you and I could probably tell the difference.
Yeah.
But To your average, person that's been to the Magic Kingdom, they would have just said, "Oh yeah, that's Cinderella's castle."
Yeah. So let's
Yes.
talk about the food. I've written several trip planning articles about Tokyo Disneyland now, and one of the questions I get asked about most is the food. Um, there's a lot of people who are a little picky. Japan is a nation that eats a lot of fish, so I get a lot of questions about like, is there anything besides fish, or is there anything for picky eaters? I was wondering what was your experience with the food in the parks.
Sure. So I don't eat seafood. My wife does. I say that, and I had seafood on a couple of occasions accidentally on this trip. But there was more than enough chicken, beef, pork options throughout. And I would say though that if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, you're going to be SOL. You're going to have a rough time
Yeah, I
trying to
agree,
find
and
something.
and a big thing over there, not even just in the parks, but in almost any restaurant, is modifications. They either don't like it or will just tell you no. So if you get a burger and like for example, there was
Why are you
this
getting a burger?
well, I mean, I was just using an example. There's this sandwich in Toontown, and it looks like Donald Duck's like foot,
Yep.
and it's like a fish sandwich. And so I hate tartar sauce. I just like hate it. And I asked for no tartar sauce, and they hold up their arms like this and say no modifications. So
Okay.
I've heard that from other people too who try to like say no lettuce or whatever. They just want you to order it and do nothing. So I was wondering, did you have any experiences like that?
No, you'd warn me that don't expect any modifications.
Yeah.
So I had that expectation going in that, all right, don't even bother. Just make sure that it's something that you're either comfortable eating around or comfortable eating. So I didn't bother with that. I'm a picky eater, but not that picky. I guess in the last few years we've started doing Blue Apron, if you're unfamiliar, like Plated or any of those other meal at home services. So it kind of has forced me to branch out into things that I wouldn't otherwise ordinarily eat. But
Right.
um, for me, like fish was more a texture thing. And one of the things that you suggested that I tried was a deep fried octopus ball, and that was fine because I mean, you could have deep fried a shoe, and I probably would have eaten it. It's
Yeah,
not a
he's talking about Tokiyaki, and it's like my favorite Japanese thing. It's like it is literally like a little ball of dough with other ingredients that I don't know what, and then a little chunk of octopus, and it's so good. It's so
it
good.
did, and I didn't taste anything. I was going to make a weird word out of octopus that I'm not going to say, uh, but, but it didn't taste much like octopus. Although I don't recall ever having octopus, so I don't know what they taste like. But
You
it
never had like
it tasted
what do they call it when you go to like an Italian restaurant and they got the little rings? What do they call that? And they're deep fried. Yeah, anyway.
pasta.
No. Yeah, never mind. So the two Tokyo Disneyland rides that everyone talks about and hypes up is Pooh's Honey Hunt and Monsters Inc. Ride and Go Seek. Um, I was wondering if when you rode those, were they worth the hype? Like, did you enjoy them as much as you thought that you thought you would?
They were both a lot of fun. Something that I've said on my own show and elsewhere to just people. I don't think any one attraction at these parks is worth the trip alone. It really is a combination of everything. But Pooh's Honey Hunt is a great way to show off that trackless technology. It's a really fun attraction. We wound up doing it 3 times on the one day that it was open, that it was there. So we definitely enjoyed it. Um, and then Monsters Inc. Again, if people don't know what it is, it's an interactive ride, but it's not a competition. You're given flashlights and you're activating things in the various show scenes you go through. It's kind of like a ramped up version of Men in Black Alien Attack, I think.
Yeah, the story
Um,
of the ride is Boo is invited back to the laugh floor, and they're gonna play flashlight tag. And so along
yeah,
the way, Randall is trying to like kidnap her again, but you inadvertently like thwart his plans with your flashlight. It's actually a really fun ride, I think.
it is. And my initial response, I expected to go over there thinking Pooh's Honey Hunt was the greatest attraction in the world, and it really was a lot of fun. But I think I like the Monsters Inc. ride even better.
Interesting.
They both are quite a bit of fun, decent length. I don't know the exact ride time, but it didn't feel like they were cut short at all.
Yeah.
Really family friendly rides.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes Disney in the American parks will try to build a family friendly thing, but it'll be either very low capacity, or not very low capacity, but pretty low capacity, like Toy Story Midway Mania, or they think they're building a family attraction, but then it actually like scares children to death. Like it's tough to be a bug. But these two are just completely family friendly, high capacity rides that everyone can enjoy.
Yeah, that's really what it's. These very much feel like Disney rides to me.
Yeah.
What the intent of a Disney ride is, and I know that there are Disney rides that have higher requirements, that have more thrills, that certainly get that feel as well. But these two fit that family demographic very well.
Right. Yeah, and they're kind of taking the classic Disney dark ride formula, and just making them super modern with all these new technical achievements, but none of those technical things get in the way of the ride or the storytelling. Like, it's just bliss. It's just a pure fun ride.
Yeah, it's not wasted. I mean, there's scenes that are animatronic driven. There are scenes that are screen driven. It's all blended together. There are scenes that are special effects driven. That's all in Honey Hunt.
Yeah.
And it's all blended together well. And oftentimes, what you see with Disney and Imagineering is they'll kind of fall in love with one particular gimmick, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Be it like the projection technology, which works incredibly well, so they like to use it. In the case of Honey Hunt, they combine a bunch of their tricks into one attraction, and it really worked well.
Yeah.
It's nothing like Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey, but it's similar in as much as it's a combination of a variety of different things that's just well executed.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to ask you about any other standout attractions in Disneyland or Disney Sea, but first I wanted to talk about my standout attraction. It was one I did not expect. It's called 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Now, Magic Kingdom had a ride of the same name, but you sat in the long submarines and you kind of observed these static and semi-static sets with very rudimentary figures and such. But this one is it's real hard to explain. You sit in your own personal submarine that only fits 6 people each. 2 people face forward, and then 2 people face left, and 2 people face right. You each have your own kind of very large porthole that goes. You're sitting on a bench, and the porthole goes from your head to your toes, basically. And you're not actually underwater, but there is water in the screen. So when you're diving, for example, bubbles come up, and then there's lighting effects and everything, and it's a crazy effect. And then when you're on the ride, all the plankton and little props everywhere kind of sway and move like they are underwater. And you encounter a giant squid, and he shocks you, and then you fall down to this weird ancient civilization, and then you're running out of oxygen, and then these strange creatures push you back up to the top, and it's a suspended ride, but you wouldn't know when you're on it. So you're looking down, you don't see any tracks, but it's suspended like Peter Pan's flight. And I just thought that ride was incredible, and you don't hear anyone really talk about it. It's not hyped up by Disney because it's not like a big thrill ride. But then the people I know who have ridden it are just like love it. So what did you think about 20,000 Leagues? And then were there any other standout attractions in Disneyland or Disney Sea over there?
Sure. So I agree with you. Everything you said about it, and it's not a thrill ride. Actually, I ask you this question. You may or may not know. When we went on it, we were always on the right side, and I suspect it's because I'm overweight, and that's the fat guy seat. But I don't know for sure. I would have preferred to see it from the different angles, if only for the reason to see it from different angles.
Yeah.
But it was certainly an interesting take on it. when I was growing up, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea wasn't really a Grassy family favorite, mainly because it had long lines. But in this case, they solved the capacity issue.
Yeah.
They by doing it in this manner, you can get a lot of people through there. It's a totally unique ride, nothing like anything we've been on. I guess your Peter Pan comparison is pretty apt, but you're in a fully enclosed capsule,
Yeah.
and it makes
You're
you
in
feel
your
like you're
own personal
underwater.
sub. Yeah.
But that's probably the closest comparison to it. But it really that's not even really doing it justice.
Yeah.
If somebody were to tell you, all right, it's a combination of Peter Pan and the submarines over at Disneyland, they think you're high. So it is. This is something that kind of holds true to all of Disney Sea, though. You don't really see repeat attraction types. There's 7 or 8 marquee rides there, and they're all different attraction types.
Yeah, totally.
I think the closest thing would be Journey to the Center of the Earth and the Indiana Jones adventure, or Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, whatever it's called there. Just because it's a slot ride, but still it's totally different vehicles, and really a totally different experience. But this just kind of adds to that. It's another unique ride system in a park that is so well blended and balanced. That no, we probably did it. We were in Disney Sea 3 times. We definitely did it once a day. I think we did it twice a couple of times as well. So it was one of our favorites as well.
Yeah, it's one of those rides where you could ride it, 100 times and notice something different because there's just so many little props and things to look at in there.
Right.
So anything else stand out in Tokyo Disney?
Sure. In Disneyland, Disney Sea, both, doesn't matter.
Yeah, either one. Anything.
So again, you warned me of this, and Sinbad storybook journey was a favorite of ours as well. The song, even though I didn't understand it, is an earwig. It gets stuck in your head.
It's an Alan Menken written song that is very inspirational and how do you even explain it? I mean, it sounds like something from a Disney classic movie.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, it's in Japanese, but you can get...
The chorus is Compass of the Heart, right? Something like that.
Right. You can get a little card when you get in line. It'll tell you the English lyrics, so you can kind of try to hum along in your head, I guess, if you want. But other than that, it's another one of those just crazy, amazing hidden gem rides where epic in scope, a long, slow-moving boat ride in the same style as It's a Small World, but the art style is very storybook. And I was explaining this to someone earlier today, actually. The animatronics, which there are dozens and dozens of, imagine the auctioneer from Pirates of the Caribbean, how fluid he is and how much he moves and just how good his animation looks. Every animatronic in Sinbad is like this, but small and storybook style.
I wouldn't necessarily go that far. I'd say they're probably more on par with the Splash Mountain ones.
Really? Because that's like the official line from Disney is that like they're the A2000.
If they're, I mean, I could be wrong, but maybe it's because I'm not noticing the level of movement. But there's one figure that stood out to me, and this will probably reign true for you. Figure of a belly dancer, and just the movement of her arms was very lifelike.
Yeah.
Nothing seems like old school World of Motion where they're like spazzing out, but everything seemed fluid and like everything was moving as it should. But I didn't feel. I mean, the Auctioneer is one of the better animatronics that Disney's ever created. That's why I'm a little bit hesitant to say that. But if you're telling me that they're all that level of compliance in the AA figures, then I'll believe you if that's the official line from Disney. I just felt like, I mean, the Splash Mountain animatronics aren't exactly bad either.
Yeah, I mean, very true.
So either way, there's quite a bit of motion in it. I'm sure kids will love it, even if they don't necessarily understand the story. And I was discussing with people where it could possibly fit stateside, and it's maybe a little bit too cartoony for Epcot, but we're already breaking that barrier.
Yeah.
So I could certainly see it in Morocco. It's it's an earwig. It's a ride that I'd love to go on again and hear it in English. But something that we probably did 4 or 5 times when we were there.
Yeah, and I agree. It's a great ride, and I think it would do really well in the States. It actually has kind of an interesting history. It opened up as the Seven Voyages of Sinbad in when it was
Okay.
a Disney Sea, and Sinbad was more of an evil character. He would pillage the towns and steal their gold and fight with the monkeys and stuff. And currently on the ride, there's a cute little tiger known as Shandu. There he is right
I'm
there.
very jealous.
And so he kind of adds this cute little thing, and he's like the buddy of Sinbad, and he's in a pile of bananas, and he's digging in because he loves bananas, and he found a jewel he likes. But in the original version, he wasn't there, and it was. I've had some Japanese friends explain to me that it was kind of a mean-spirited ride at first. So
Okay.
I think that ride just turned off the frequent visitors of Disney Sea, and they just kind of never looked back at it. I mean, sure, it has its fans, but I mean, that is one where the park could be super busy. Everything has a 2-hour wait, but that has a 10-minute wait. And other than that, it's a total walk on. Like I don't think I've ever waited for it. It's always been a walk on.
It's interesting that you say I didn't know that about it potentially having not potentially it having that different take on Sinbad because you kind of got that vibe trying to piece together the story without the cheat sheet for it. I do recommend going to guest relations and getting those English cheat sheets. They have them for every ride in Disney Sea. Um, but it's interesting that you say that because I kind of got that vibe that, hey, is he just pillaging stuff? And we already have a similar story over in Tower of Terror. Um, didn't know if it was intended to be kind of an extension to that, but
Yeah.
it's otherwise a, uplifting ride. The song itself is uplifting.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that was the original story of it.
Yeah.
I'll have to look on YouTube to see the original video.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Definitely look that up. Okay, so a couple more questions before we wrap this up. I was curious if you, while you were traveling around Tokyo or Kyoto or Osaka, anywhere in Japan, did you ever feel unsafe?
Not at all.
Same here. I never like, and we'd be walking back from restaurants or whatever pretty late at night, 11 or 12, and a little kid would like ride by on a bicycle.
I should clarify. Very first night, there was an earthquake. I felt
Okay.
unsafe.
Okay.
But in terms of like feeling threatened by other people, absolutely not.
Right. So you mentioned earlier, I guess I'll just ask again, but how did you feel about the transportation system in around the country? Did you take the Shinkansen, the bullet train?
We did, yeah. We took that from Tokyo to Kyoto, and then again from Kyoto for a shorter stint on it to Osaka for a baseball game.
Okay. And I mean that was easy, and besides the bullet train too, just the normal transportation was easy enough to.
Yeah, it was easy. Bullet train wise, if you're traveling with luggage, I'd recommend getting a reserved seat on it, but it's
Yeah.
not necessary. We wound up doing that at Tokyo Station, and it was relatively easy. We had some time to kill before a tour that we were doing in Tokyo, so we straightened all that transportation out. But as Guy said, using Google Maps really helps, really spells everything out for you. And as long as you don't screw up your Wi-Fi device and get them to throttle your internet speed, you'll be good there.
Yeah. What was your favorite non-Disney thing that you experienced when you were in Japan?
It's kind of a tough call between the sumo match and the baseball game. I'm a huge Red Sox fan. I've been to my fair share of great Red Sox games. This was the most wild baseball game I've ever been to, largely
Wow.
because of the crowd. It's was kind of like a mixture of European soccer and college football.
Wow.
A lot of fun. I don't know if you listened to our podcast yet. I talked about it a little bit, but in short, crowd is very much into it. There's chants, there's songs, there's seemingly like rehearsed cheers throughout the game. And the most ridiculous thing was in the eighth inning, 90% of the crowd of say 35, 40,000 people inflated balloons, released them towards the field, and they were ready for it. They had people to clean it up, and we've never seen anything like it, and it was just fun. the sumo match, that was something that was just totally different. There's no sport like that in America where it's that respected. Everything related to the sport is prestige based. The way they wear their hair, the way they wear their covering, the diaper that they wear.
Yeah.
That was all very, very interesting, and something that again we'd never be able to see stateside. So
yeah, that is something I definitely want to do at some point in the future, is go to a sumo match.
yeah, if you have the opportunity, I certainly recommend it. They run about, I think, 5 tournaments a year, each lasting 15 days. We really kind of lucked out that there was one going on while we were in Tokyo.
Nice.
If not, occasionally, I guess you can get into some of the practices, which is better than nothing. So something to look into if you really want to see it.
Yeah. Okay, final question. Obviously it's expensive, so money aside, would you go back?
I would, not tomorrow.
Yeah.
There are some other things that I think Maria and I want to do first.
Sure.
Maria's my wife, not some random person that I just decided to name. But I mean, the price point is a big thing. This is something where, all right, we're not going to be able to do this every year.
Yeah.
And I think if we were to do it again, we'd do it differently. We might not stay at Miracosta. We might stay for less time, or we might change things up a little bit. I think you used Airbnb at some point, so maybe we do that to save some money.
Yeah.
But I think there was nothing about it that said no, we're not coming back. I think other than just being able to afford to do it and be able to, do other things that we might want to do.
Yeah.
We both had a great time. Certainly recommend going back. I don't think I'm going to be going as frequently as you are. I think
I'm addicted.
the benefit of having those cheaper flights really is nice, I'm sure. But
it goes without saying, I'm a fool. I'm addicted. My wife is addicted too. And I'm like putting off other trips that I should be taking, while I'm young, to go back to Tokyo so many times. And I'm already planning my next one, December 2017. I want to go back.
You got to take a Disney cruise first. You got to do that first.
Yeah, I'm thinking that maybe next. I don't know.
Next time you go to Disney World, do a 3-day cruise.
Okay.
Humor me.
Yeah.
And it'll be like $1,500 on top of it.
Yeah.
And you'll like it.
I'm definitely thinking about it. So yeah, that was great. I hope that was interesting for everybody watching. I just thought that this would kind of be an interesting subject, even if you're not thinking about traveling to one of the foreign parks. Let me know in the comments what you thought, or any questions you may have about traveling to Tokyo. I have done it a few times now, and I can answer any. If you have any questions for Tim, I will pass them along to him. And I think that's pretty much it. Tim, do you have anything else to say?
A very useful thing was having Guy's phone number as I was walking around. So, Guy, you might want to just post that in the notes of this video so that anybody that is walking around Tokyo Disneyland or Disney Sea can just kind of hit you up. I didn't have any real regard for the time difference either when I was hitting him with questions. I think I probably hit you at like 5 a.m. a few times.
And I told you, I'm like, you can text me whatever. I'm going to be sleeping though, and my phone's going to be on mute. But if you are in Tokyo Disney and you have questions, you can tweet at me at Guy Selga. Tim, you can text me. That's fine.
Same here too. I love talking about this. This is one of my favorite trips that I've ever been on. So if you have questions, certainly hit me up on Twitter, WDW Theme Parks, or over on my podcast Facebook group, E-Ticket Report. I don't know if it's like groups.e-ticket. I don't know what the hell it is. I'm a bad promoter of the stuff, but yeah, I love talking about it. So certainly don't hesitate to hit me up with questions.
Sweet. All right. Thank you for joining me, Tim, for this. If you like this video, smash that thumbs up button in the corner. Like I said, leave a comment. If you aren't subscribed already, please do. It helps us make, videos. Yeah, I think that's it. So thank you for watching.